This week, a single statement from Iran's foreign minister moved mortgage rates more than anything the Federal Reserve has done in months. That is how connected the world is right now, and is exactly why your strategy has to be bigger than today's rate. I am Ron Siegel, Certified Liability Advisor, helping families build wealth through strategic debt management. Let me walk you through what happened this week, and more importantly, what it means for the families you are trying to help. All eyes have been on the Middle East conflict and the Strait of Hormuz. When that shipping lane got restricted, oil prices climbed from about $67 a barrel before the conflict to as high as $117 at the peak. That pushed inflation fears higher, and mortgage rates followed, climbing from roughly 5.9% all the way up to 6.64%. This week, 3 separate headlines hit the bond market in a single morning. First, a proposed plan to end the war surfaced, involving unfreezing Iranian assets in exchange for uranium concessions. Second, peace talks in Islamabad are set for this Sunday, with reports that President Trump may personally attend. Third, and this was the biggest mover, Iran's foreign minister announced the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz for the duration of the ceasefire. What happened next? Mortgage-backed securities surged over 3/8 of a point in one morning. The 10-year Treasury is currently sitting at 4.24% as we record this, down from a peak of 4.48. Oil has pulled back to around $85 a barrel, and according to Mortgage News Daily, the national average 30-year fixed rate is 6.29% today. That is a national average benchmark, not an offer to lend, and it represents meaningful improvement from where we were at the worst of this. The ceasefire expires early next week, around the 21st or 22nd. The market is watching carefully. Rate analysts are tracking the 10-year in a range between 4.1 and 4.4%. Progress on peace talks pushes us toward the better end. Setbacks push us back up. So next week matters. Now, let me talk about what is happening below the surface, because this week gave us a clear picture of where household finances really are. The Fed's Beige Book came out this week, a report from all 12 Federal Reserve districts, and a few things stood out. Consumers are stretched. Businesses say they cannot push through price increases because people cannot absorb them. And for the first time, the Beige Book specifically flagged that traffic at food banks is significantly higher. That is not a footnote. That is a signal. Buy now, pay later platforms, the ones being used for groceries, are showing spiking delinquencies. When families are financing everyday expenses and falling behind on it, that tells us something real about household financial pressure. That is exactly what Danielle DiMartino Booth addressed in this week's Daily Feather, titled Building a Better Parachute. She makes the point that unemployment insurance only covers about 1/4 of the total unemployed right now. More than 7 million people are out of work. Another 6 million are not in the labor force but want to work. The gig economy helps, but it is largely invisible to the official numbers. A household that looks stable on paper may be closer to the edge than anyone knows. That is precisely why a well-structured financial strategy matters, and why the conversations you are having with your clients right now are the most important conversations in the room. There is some good news here too. According to the Cotality Rent Report for February, new single-family rents are up just 1.1% year over year, the slowest rate of increase since 2010, down from 2.6% a year ago, and just a third of where rents were growing before COVID. Slower rent growth helps slow inflation. Slower inflation gives the Fed room to act, and that is the path to lower mortgage rates. New York Fed President John Williams said this week that he expects inflation to come down to between 2.75% and 3% this year and reach 2% next year. GDP growth of 2% to 2.5% this year, those are the guideposts to watch. And here is a number worth writing down: 22%. That is the share of mortgages in this country with interest rates above 6%. When rates improve, that is a refinance wave building. The median mortgage payment in America just crossed $2,000 for the first time. Obviously, that's not in California. A meaningful drop in rates translates directly into real monthly payment relief for real families. For context on where buyer confidence stands right now, the NAHB Housing Market Index fell to 7-month low this week. Higher rates and uncertainty since the Iran conflict began are weighing on new home demand and construction activity. That is the current reality, but the pent-up demand is there. When rates improve and confidence returns, the buyers who are prepared to move first. And that brings me to this week's featured tools, because strategy always starts with information. Here's what nobody tells you about your credit report until it is too late. Most homeowners think their credit report is just a score. It is not. It is a living document that quietly determines what rates they qualify for, how much house they can buy, and sometimes whether a deal closes at all. Your clients need to know what is on theirs before they ever sit across from a lender. Nobody tells you that 22% credit card interest is optional for homeowners. That stops people cold when they hear it. For homeowners carrying high interest credit card debt, there are strategies available that most people never consider, not because they're complicated, but because nobody told them. That is where you come in. Strategy beats rate always. When your clients are asking if the market is dying, share this. 57 days on market, right on average, stop the panicking and start planning. The market is normalized. That is actually good news. It means there is time to get the financial strategy right before making the biggest purchase of someone's life. Now, let me introduce this week's featured calculator. The FIRE calculator, F-I-R-E, stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The decisions your clients are making right now about their mortgage structure, their equity, their debt, are directly connected to when that day arrives. The FIRE calculator helps put a real number on that goal so that the strategy gets built around something concrete, not something vague. If you'd like access to our financial calculators, just ask. And while we are talking about tools that matter, KeySteps is a free platform that gives your client credit monitoring, identity theft protection, and household budgeting tools all in one place. Visit rsrlinks.com/keysteps. That's rsrlinks.com/keysteps to get started. The economic calendar looking ahead to next week, here is what to watch. Tuesday, the big day. We get retail sales numbers. The forecast calls for a 1.3% gain, which will be the strongest reading in several months. If that number comes in strong, expect some upward pressure on rates. We also get pending home sales and ADP employment data on Tuesday. And Fed Governor Waller is scheduled to speak Tuesday afternoon. His comments on the rate outlook could move markets. Wednesday brings the weekly mortgage application report and crude oil inventory data. Both worth watching, given what oil has done to rates this month. Thursday delivers weekly jobless claims and the S&P Global PMI reports on manufacturing and services. Manufacturing has been showing some surprise signs of life in both the Empire Fed and Philly Fed surveys. Let us see if that continues, or if as some indicators suggest, the restock narrative is starting to fade. There's also unresolved story of the Fed chair transition. Jerome Powell's term ends May 15th, with Kevin Warsh expected to step in. That nomination is currently being held up in Washington. Markets do not like uncertainty in Fed leadership. This is a story to watch heading into the end of the month. There is one more thing worth noting as we head into the weekend. The MOVE Index, which tracks volatility in the Treasury market, fell below its 100-day moving average this week. That suggests the most extreme rate swings may be settling down even as geopolitical headlines can move things quickly. Geopolitics, consumer stress, Fed leadership questions, and there is a lot in motion. But the fundamentals of a sound financial strategy do not change with the headlines. Strategy beats rate always. Have a great weekend, and we'll speak to you again next week.